Story 1.
The entity known as Kate, the Bell Witch Haunting. In the quiet, fertile lands of Robertson County, Tennessee, John Bell Sr. had carved out a life of prosperity for his wife Lucy and their 9 children. Their farm was a testament to frontier resilience. But in the autumn of 1817, an unseen malice infiltrated their home. It began not with a shriek, but with a simple, rhythmic knocking on the outer walls, sound like knuckles rapping against wood from the other side of the grave. It was a sound that would herald the beginning of the most documented and terrifying paranormal case, a haunting that would become known as the legend of the Bell Witch. The disturbances quickly evolved from unsettling noises into a personalized campaign of terror. Invisible hands ripped bed covers from sleeping children, and invisible forces yanked their hair until they screamed. The family's youngest daughter, Betsy, a girl of 12, became the entity's favorite target. She was pinched, slapped, and beaten by an unseen assailant, her body often left covered in welts and bruises. The entity then found its voice, rasping, guttural whisper that soon graduated to a clear, intelligent speech. It would recite scripture in a blasphemous parody, all while revealing the family's deepest, most private secrets with cruel glee. The Bell home was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a cage where the very air could betray them, and privacy was a forgotten luxury. The entity, which often identified itself as Old Kate Batts, a local woman who held a grudge against John Bell over a disputed slave and a land deal, seemed to draw power from attention. News of the haunting spread, drawing curiosity from miles around. Neighbors who came to witness the phenomena often fled in terror after being physically assaulted or having their own hidden sins whispered to them by the disembodied voice. The legend grew so great that it reached the ears of the famed war hero and future president, General Andrew Jackson. Intrigued, he assembled a party of roughnecks and set out for the Bell farm to debunk the superstition. As his wagon neared the property, the wheels locked solid, immovable despite all efforts. A piercing, inhuman shriek tore through the air, and a voice was heard to say, "All right, let the old general come on, but he will be sorry." Jackson, a man who had faced down the British Army, later confessed, "I would rather fight the entire British Army than to deal with the Bell Witch." His party beat a hasty retreat before ever spending the night. The witch's ultimate vendetta, however, was reserved for the family's patriarch, John Bell Sr. It vowed, with chilling specificity, to kill him. His health began a precipitous and inexplicable decline. His body was racked with violent seizures. His face would contort into a mask of agony, and his tongue would swell, choking off his speech. He became a prisoner in his own failing body. The end came on the morning of December 20th, 1820, John was found paralyzed in his bed. A small, corked vial was discovered nearby. When a drop of the strange, black liquid inside was administered to the family cat, the animal convulsed and died. John Bell was pronounced dead shortly after. The witch's voice echoed through the house, not in mourning, but in triumphant, cackling celebration. It was said that the entity even sang ribald songs during his funeral, cementing its reputation not as a mere ghost, but as a truly malevolent, intelligent force. After John's death, the entity's activity slowly waned. It promised Betsy it would return in 7 years, and true to its word, it visited the family briefly in 1828 before seeming to depart for good. But the legacy of fear it cultivated has never truly left. The Bell Witch Cave, a dark, damp cavern on the original property, is said to be its lingering home. Visitors report equipment failures, disembodied whispers, and an oppressive sense of being watched by something ancient and intelligent. The story of the Bell Witch endures not as a simple campfire tale, but as a stark, historical warning. Some wounds inflicted upon the world do not heal, and some voices from the past refuse to be silenced. They simply wait in the darkness, listening for the next curious soul to draw near. Not all rest in peace. Stay sharp, everyone. To all our amazing viewers and loyal subscribers, we know many of you watch our videos, but haven't subscribed yet. If you enjoy these stories and want to support this project, please hit subscribe, give the video a like, and share it. Now, enjoy what's coming up. The Whistle in the Dark. The Appalachian woods surrounding the town of Quetta hold a silence that is less an absence of sound and more a presence of its own. For Aaron, these woods were a haunted place long before he ever set foot in them. They were the place that swallowed his father, Stanley Mitchell, a man who stepped away from his hunting partner to retrieve a forgotten grunter call from his truck and vanished into the thin, cold mountain air. The search was massive and futile. For 2 weeks, deputies and volunteers scoured the hills. The official focus shifted to the network of abandoned mining pits near Cucumber. The theory was a tragic accident, fall down a hidden shaft. A private investigator, hired by the grieving family, found no body, but did discover a single, unsettling anomaly. A section of tunnel wall deep within one mine was covered in crude, spray-painted graffiti. The symbols were alien, the language unrecognizable. To the investigator, it was the work of local teens. To Aaron's mother, it was a taunt. The case went cold, leaving a family shrouded in a grief perpetually tinged with the agony of the unknown. Years later, Aaron, now a young man, found himself driving to the home of his Uncle Lee his father's brother. Lee had become a ghost of himself after the tragedy, distant and consumed by a guilt no one could assuage. Their reunion was tentative, a fragile bridge built over a canyon of shared loss. It was there, amidst strained conversation, that Lee made a proposal. He wanted to take Erin to the exact spot where Stanley was last seen. He believed it could offer them both a form of closure, a final chapter to a story that had haunted them for too long. The hike was deceptively normal until Lee led Erin to a rocky overlook, the decaying entrance of the cucumber mine visible below. It was there Lee confessed his terrible secret. He hadn't just waited at the camp. He'd seen a figure moving with his brother's gait walk directly into one of the mine shafts. Driven by this decades-old memory, they descended into the pit. The mine entrance was a jagged scar in the earth, the darkness within seeming to swallow the light. As they stepped inside, the air grew cold and heavy with the scent of wet metal and decay. Erin turned, his small keychain flashlight illuminating his uncle's silhouette. But Lee wasn't holding a light. He was holding a pistol, his hand shaking uncontrollably. A gunshot erupted, the sound of physical force in the confined space. As Erin fled in blind terror, Lee's screams echoed, not of anger, but of frantic, desperate bargaining. "He's here. I brought him. I did what you asked." The screams were then cut short by a sudden, warm rush of air that carried a stench of burning death, followed by an absolute and profound silence. The official investigation concluded that a sudden blowout of toxic gas, like carbon monoxide, had caused Lee to experience violent hallucinations, leading him to attack his nephew before succumbing himself. The mine was permanently sealed with explosives. Erin accepted the report, but he knew it was a comfortable lie. His uncle wasn't a victim of random gas. He was the final payment on a debt incurred decades earlier. Lee had seen what truly lived in that mine, and it had given him a choice all those years ago. He lived his life, but it had finally come to collect. In the deep, dark places of the world, some things are patient, and they are always hungry. Not all rest in peace. The thing that feasts on time. Dr. Mira Vance was an anthropologist, a woman who built her career on rational inquiry and empirical evidence. Her research into the isolated Malungan communities of the Appalachian highlands was supposed to be her magnum opus. It was in pursuit of a fringe-lit rumor of anomalous longevity in a forgotten settlement that she first navigated the winding, treacherous roads to Hollow Ridge, a village so secluded it barely registered on any map. She came seeking the secret of a long life. She found a truth that tasted like fear. The air in Hollow Ridge was thick with the scent of pine rot and damp earth. The villagers watched her from their porches with a stillness that felt less like peace and more like a held breath. Following a terse direction from a suspicious store clerk, Mira found the home of Ona, a woman purported to be 112 years old. She was met at the door by Ona's two Sungstall, weathered men with eyes as cold and hard as river stone. They allowed her inside with a silent, grim reluctance. The woman lying in the bed was less a person and more a monument to decay. Her skin was a thin, translucent parchment stretched taut over a skeletal frame. Her eyes, sunk deep into their sockets, seemed to stare at a point far beyond the room's cramped walls. The air smelled of mildew and a faint, sweet odor of decay that Mira could not place. Mira's questions about family, history, and traditions were met with utter silence from the ancient woman. The sons hovered, their impatience a palpable force. Driven by a professional obsession that bordered on trespass, Mira leaned close, her voice a soft, insistent whisper. "Ona," she asked, "how have you lived so long? What is your secret?" The effect was instantaneous. The old woman's head twitched. Her clouded eyes focused on Mira with a shocking, razor-sharp clarity, filled not with wisdom, but with a pure, unadulterated terror. Her lips, dry and cracked, parted. The words that emerged were a rasping exhale, a confession forced from a soul that had been holding it for a century. "It eats the years," she whispered. The strain of the utterance seemed to break her. Her body convulsed weakly, her eyes rolling back as she gasped for air. Her sons erupted, one shouting at Mira to get out, while the other tended to his mother, his curses following her as she stumbled back into the blinding daylight. Haunted by those 4 words, Mira spent a week in a state of agitated research, scouring archives and consulting colleagues. The phrase, "it eats the years," echoed in her dreams, always accompanied by the image of Ona's terrified eyes. Rationality warred with a growing, primal dread. Compelled by a need to understand, she defied all professional caution and returned to Hollow Ridge. This time, the village was profoundly silent. No one lingered on the porches. No smoke curled from the chimneys. An oppressive stillness had settled over the hollow. Her heart pounding, she climbed the path to Ona's house. The door was unlocked. She pushed it open to find the main room completely empty. No bed, no lamp, no sign that anyone had ever lived there. She checked every structure in the cluster. All were deserted. It was as if the entire community, every man, woman, and child, had simply vanished into the mountain mist, leaving behind only their empty shells of homes. Dr. Vance never published a paper on Hollow Ridge. The experience was too nebulous, too unscientific, and too deeply unsettling. Officially, she concluded the lead was a dead end, but in the quiet of her study, she knew the truth. Ona's words were not a metaphor for a healthy diet or a clean living. They were a literal, terrifying transaction. The longevity of Hollow Ridge wasn't a gift, it was a loan. And whatever ancient, nameless entity held the deed had finally called in the debt, collecting not just Ona, but the entire community that had bargained with it. Some secrets aren't meant to be studied. They are meant to be buried, because the thing that guards them is always, always hungry. Not all rest in peace.